Good evening.
Good
I'm
evening.
Jean Hairston. Thank you, Mr. Figures. I'd like to call to order this February 19th meeting of the Jackson Public School District Board of Trustees. Dr. Belcher, would you introduce the young person who will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
It is my honor to introduce Mr. Ananias Rice. He is a 5th grade honor roll student at Lee Elementary. He enjoys all subjects, but is most fond of science and math. Ananias is respectful and polite. His charming and friendly attitude allows him to be well-liked among his peers. His parents, Amber Pope and Wilson Rice III, are very proud of his accomplishments and encourage him to always do his best. Ananias is a clever and brilliant role model for his younger 3 brothers. He is a member of New Jerusalem Baptist Church. Ananias enjoys playing football and loves to draw. His favorite video game is Fortnite. Ananias also aspires to be a scientist and an artist.
I pledge of allegiance. Oh yeah, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm sorry. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated.
Thank you so much, young man. We appreciate your joining us. Thank you. Today, our moment of inspiration will be delivered by the Reverend Marion Young Talley, PhD. Reverend Talley, would you join us at the podium as I introduce you? The Reverend Dr. Marion Talley is an ordained Baptist minister and associate pastor of the Ferry Street Baptist Church in Jackson, Mississippi. She also serves as the director of the Affordable Care Office at Ferry Street Baptist Church. Dr. Talley has worked with New Way Mississippi Incorporated, teaching employment skills to ex-offenders since 2011. She has served as chaplain at the Boston Medical Center and in churches from California to Massachusetts as associate pastor, director of the youth department, adult Sunday school teacher, Bible study teacher, and prayer facilitator. She has preached at the historic Harvard Divinity School Chapel and the First Church in Cambridge, Massachusetts. The Reverend Dr. Talley served as immediate past president of the Mary Church Terrell Literary Club, Incorporated, president of Church Women United, a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, and Phi Beta Kappa. She is one of 9 children and a grandmother as well. Dr. Talley's scripture of inspiration is Proverbs, 3rd chapter. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart and lean not unto thine own understanding. Please welcome the Reverend Dr. Marion Young Talley.
Good evening. Good evening. To the superintendent, Dr. Green, to the board president, Dr. Hairston, to the other board members, and to my the attendees. One of the lines from the song "Lift Every Voice and Sing" says, "God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, Thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, Thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path, we pray." And as we reflect on the past and we contemplate the future, this song then helps us to know that we live in a world of change. I am reminded of a missionary who got lost and wandered into a village where everyone was blind. And after being there for a few weeks, the council in the village got together and decided that they needed to examine this person because of the way he talked. Sure enough, when they touched his face, they found out that he had warts on his face, which caused him to describe things in color and use descriptive terms that they could not even imagine. Warts is what they called his eyes. Mm-hmm. And at the same time as they were examining the young missionary, he told the council that he wanted to marry one of the girls in the village. Well, after the council deliberated, he was told that he would have to let them get rid of the warts that caused him to be sick. He agreed, but as time came closer for them to take the hot irons and put his eyes out, he changed his mind and decided that he did not want to be in darkness. So he finally told them that he would not let them put his eyes out because he was not sick, but they were. In the same vein, you see, they didn't like that, but in this dark and fractured world in which we live, somehow we have begun to call those things that do not facilitate an honest, giving, sharing, civil-minded, productive society as normal, and pretend then that those who don't are sick. Behavior then that once was not tolerated and thought, which once were totally outlandish, have become the norm. And today, too much of mankind still chooses darkness rather than light and calls it wellness. And so we must never lose sight, though, of our goal. An America in which every student and every individual shares all the opportunities of their society. One in which every student has a chance to advance their welfare to the limit of their capacity. But board and those attendees, just as Moses was called to challenge the injustice done to his people, you are called to remember that there are students depending on you to be their light. And just as Joshua was called to lead his people over the treacherous Jordan, you are called to lead faculty, staff, administrators, and the community across the treacherous policy decisions. And just as Jesus was called to walk, talk, and sacrifice in love, you are called to live a life that manifests these virtues. And so now, let us pray. Our Lord and our God, we come requesting your presence here at this gathering tonight, and we request your guidance, your grace, and your mercy. You provide for us in ways beyond our knowledge, certainly beyond our deserving, and we can trust in your light and care completely. Yet faith is sometimes challenged. Our eyes, blinded by doubt and fear, must be opened so that we can see the truth. Help us today to view our task and our lives and the world in which we live in light of your love. We look to you, O God, for life, true life. Lead us into the light. Keep us forever in the path, we pray. And to that end, bless and empower us. In Jesus' name we pray, and amen.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend Talley, for your words of inspiration. And this board welcomes all people to share with us their moments of inspiration, because we welcome all of our faith partners to join us and share wisdom and give us their words of encouragement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let the record show that we have established a quorum as all 7 board members are seated. Attorney Dorian Turner, do we have comments from the public?
I have no one.
Oh, we have to adopt the agenda. Thank you, Vice President. Teamwork. It's teamwork to make the dream work. Do I hear a motion to adopt the agenda as printed?
So moved.
Second? It's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is adopted. Now, do we have comments for the public?
No, we have no one.
Thank you. Let the record show we have no request for review of discipline cases. Dr. Green.
Thank you, Dr. Hairston, to members of the board and our JPS team members and community members. I have several remarks that I'd like to make this evening. First, I'd like to extend our sincere condolences to the family and loved ones in the loss of Mr. Walter Lee Tabb, Jr. Mr. Tabb joined the JPS team in August 2015 and served in several capacities over the years as at Provine and Callaway High Schools, as well as the Enrollment Services Center. Most recently, Mr. Tabb served as an exceptional education teacher at Forest Hill High School. He often displayed his love for his colleagues and students by sharing food and gifts, and most of all, through his many actions. Please keep Mr. Tabb's family, friends, and his colleagues in your thoughts and prayers during this difficult time of loss. And if you would, please join me for a moment of silence as we honor our team member, Mr. Walter Lee Tabb. Thank you.
Thank you.
In observance of Black History Month, Jackson Public Schools would like to spotlight a local hero who has meant so much to our district and to the community. Dr. Benjamin O. Canada was the first African-American superintendent of Jackson Public Schools, serving from 1991 until 1994. Dr. Canada was a native of Tallulah, Louisiana, and he grew up in a family of teachers. He once stated, "My experience has shown that if you set the benchmark high, provide teachers with the proper resources, and set high expectations, students will come up to it." Following his service in JPS, Dr. Canada went on to serve and to lead the public school systems in Atlanta and in Portland, Oregon. He died November 6, 2012. And we honor the life, the legacy, and the contributions of former Superintendent Dr. Benjamin O. Canada, on whose shoulders we stand.
Thank you.
I wanted to speak now to, we recently, as everyone knows, we made up the inclement weather day. Actually, we made that day up yesterday, February the 18th. And we received several inquiries regarding that decision to make up the school day, and so I wanted to speak to that just quickly. Per our school year 2018-2019 calendar, we changed the parent-teacher conference day on Monday, yesterday, February the 18th, to a regular school day. This date was previously identified by the district leaders and approved by this board as one of the days to be used to make up in the event of inclement weather. Accreditation Standard 13 requires that schools are in session for 180 days. Extending the day does not exempt us from that requirement. In addition to that, Standard 13 also requires that students have at least 140 hours of instructional time in order to fulfill their Carnegie unit requirements, and 70 hours to earn just one half unit. By extending the day in our Bell schedule, our students were able to obtain the required number of instructional hours prior to the last day of the semester, and it also provides what we know to be really important, critical additional learning time. And so just wanted to provide a little additional clarity to that. We actually were required to make up that day in order to get our total 180 days of instruction. Now moving on to our JPS job fairs. Many of you know that we had our last job fair on February the 9th, and it was held at the Cardozo Middle School. I'm very pleased to announce, Board, that we received a total of 283 applicants for employment during that fair. Of that amount, 133 individuals sought teaching positions, 145 applied for various classified employment vacancies, 5 of them applied for administrative positions, and 2 applied for and were recommended for teachers' assistant roles. In addition, Mr. Tommy Knowles, who is our teacher recruiter, he facilitated information sessions regarding the alternate route program as well as the special non-renewable licenses option for our teachers. I wanted to highlight this because our team is working really diligently to ensure that these job fairs, one, that they're done with quality, that we get the numbers in the door, that we raise awareness that JPS is hiring, that we are an employment or an entity of choice, and that we're working really hard to live up to the work that so many of us have called for us to do in being the education service provider to students, as well as a place where educators can come and work and be happy. So we're excited about that. ACT. Very excited to note that all JPS 11th grade students are preparing to take the ACT starting tomorrow. This is an important step as students prepare for college and careers, and it provides important data for us to monitor our progress as well as our students. The ACT is a national college admissions examination that consists of subject area tests in English, mathematics, reading, and science. Students and parents are urged to visit the ACT website at www.act.org for testing tips and general information about the exam. Now I'm very pleased to acknowledge our student athletes. National Signing Day for JPS student athletes was held February 6th, and 12 JPS student athletes signed letters of intent to play their chosen sport at the university or college of their choice. Sports represented on that day were baseball, girls and boys basketball, football, and boys soccer. Some of the universities chosen were Jackson State University, Mississippi State University, and Alcorn State. Want to provide or give a huge kudos and shout out to all of our student athletes, those who participated in the signing day, as well as others who did not participate on that particular day. And then lastly, I'm excited to also share that at this time I'd like to invite all of the students and coach of the Callaway High School mock trial team to please come forward. This modest bunch. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to announce that the Callaway High School mock trial team recently won the Mississippi Bar Regional Mock Trial Competition. The team has advanced to the Mississippi Bar State Championship and is now one of the top 7 teams in competition. Dr. Brian Grizel is their teacher coach. The team's attorney coaches are Kelly Grizel, Candace Gregory Mayberry, and Mark Perez. Members of the team are as follows: Justin Nichols, Ariana Reddick, Joy Dawn Smith, Madison Singleton, Cameron Yarber, Christy White, Rain Grizel, Jaden Vaughn, and Charliza Wilson. At the end of the regional tournament held in January, all 6 of the students acting as attorneys were ranked most effective attorney, and the 2 student witnesses were ranked most effective witness. Callaway competed against the top high school teams in the metro area. They received a special invitation from the Mississippi College School of Law to participate in advocacy activities at the law school. Callaway High is under the leadership of Ms. Shakana Anderson, and it gives me great pleasure to congratulate this wonderful team. Madam President, that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Green. Those wonderful, wonderful remarks. We are so proud of our students and our teachers, the whole team that make this wonderful work happen. Okey-doke. Item 7, information only items. Dr. Merritt, you will share information on our school improvement plans for the Mississippi Department of Education.
Great evening. First of all, to Dr. Green and Dr. Harrison, Board of Trustees, I do want to recognize the principals from the CSI schools that are here. If you would stand at this time. So before you, for information only, we have the school improvement plans for schools that are considered comprehensive support and improvement. Schools are in this category. 1, they are ranked the bottom 5% of Title I schools in the state, and or they have a graduation rate below 67%. I do also want to recognize Dr. Valerie Bradley, who is here, who works as Director of School Support, and she provides support directly to these schools.
Thank you. Oh, okie doke.
And we will be coming before you at the next meeting for approval of these plans.
Okay, I did have a couple of questions. Well, I'll yield to board members if you have questions while I.
So if they're school specific, I'll just ask the principals to respond to them if that's okay.
I wrote my questions down. I don't have them in front of me anymore. However, I would just like to say, Dr. Merritt, that I'm glad you provided our list here and you've delineated how these are different than the schools who were SARS or low-performing schools last year. Are some of the schools that were identified last year not on this current list with which we're working today?
So I think on the some of the schools, for example, Lake, they may still be on that list, but being that they are rated A, they are no longer a school considered in school improvement.
So if we don't see them at all, they have moved out of this category.
Right, if they don't have, and let me state that these designations are federal designations. So I think on the second or third column of that list that I provided, if it's just the letter grade by that school's name, that indicates that they no longer have a federal designation.
Great. Now, on this chart, 2 of the schools are, 3 of them are written in bold. Is there a reason for that?
So I think it started with elementary school, so it designates the division.
Oh, that's the division of elementary, middle, and high school. Okay, I got you. Okay. Okay, well, I'm excited about what you prepared in your summary written remarks about the work and the resources that are being brought to this work with the Mississippi Department of Education to help prepare our leadership and our teachers and principals to really make robust use of these resources that have already been offered. And apparently there's some more to come. This is an ongoing process with support from NDE around this work.
Yes, ma'am. And of course, this comes with some additional funding in addition to the Title I funding that they receive in order to help them implement their respective plan.
Dr. Merritt, if you would, just for the record and for anyone who might be listening, can you just give a synopsis of how we got to these plans, what was done to develop the plans, and what's expected?
Yes, sir. And so, of course, as you all are aware, once the schools were identified by the state, there was a process where each of these schools went to the state and made a presentation. And from there, they just gave some general specifics about the overview of their school, what was working, what was not, so on and so forth. These plans are developed in Mississippi SOARS, which is a system for schools that are in school improvement. Dr. Bradley has worked tirelessly with these individual schools to identify, first of all, we have to look at why they are in school improvement. And so what these dollars are for is to address that specific need to help these schools come out of school improvement in general. And so there's been a lot of work, and it's a lot of ongoing work that these principals and schools and their leadership teams will be involved in to hopefully move their school out of school improvement. One thing to also remember, if these schools have a CSI designation, it's 3 years in to this category, and you have to show improvement for 3 years in order to come out. So I think that's one important thing to note about CSI schools as well.
Thank you. I was looking for some schools. I wondered why they weren't there. I'm glad to know that means they've moved out of the category.
Yes, ma'am. I think it's maybe 4 there. 4 or 5.
Thank you. Other comments or questions from board members? Thank you, Dr. Merritt. Mr. McCracken, items B through H regarding information around our new bond project. Thank you, Dr. Green.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
As those are circulating around to you, I want to just give you an overview as to where we are with the bond program, as well as with the selection of the professionals, and that's primarily what the agenda speaks to. We have 7 professionals that have been selected. That's on the that's on the agenda. There's actually 8 firms, but we will bring the 8th firm to you with changing of some language in the contract next month, in addition to the balance of the professionals. All of the professionals were selected among with the criteria, and they were selected based upon their experience, the proximity to the city, as well as their capacity to perform, and that was very critical to the selection of the professionals. Some businesses have been in business for 15, 20, 30 years, and there are some that have been in business only for maybe 5 years. But all were considered, and all before you were selected to manage and to design various projects for various schools. We have a right at 16 schools that will be affected in the first phase, and 9 of those schools reflect the MDE requirements in order for them to be in compliance. So we want to address those schools first, and then the remaining schools, that's a part of phase one, we will move forward with those projects as well. Out of all the projects that we have, it's a total of 350 projects with the bond program, and this particular phase, we're scheduling to do right at 105 plus projects. And so we will be quite busy. There will be work performing after hours, on weekends, and on holidays. And again, we certainly do not want to disturb the instructional process during the day. Only those areas where there's no conflict or any noise that will prohibit instructional activities to take place. So this is one reason that we have the multitude of architects that we've selected in lieu of having one or two architects. There are other school districts that have maybe 3 architectural firms, but those are pretty much new schools. These are all renovation projects and upgrade projects. We're not doing any major additions to any facilities with the exception of performance arts, and that is a program that's going to be established, which has not been established as of yet until we bring the professional on board and meet with the performance art APAC principal as well as with the area superintendent and the superintendent to get that information. But that's where we are. We're excited. We're looking forward to move forward with the professionals. They're excited as well. We've received a number of calls. They're just waiting to move forward. And more than likely, phase one will roll over into phase two because this is only a 3-year project, and we certainly have quite a bit of work to do within those 3 years. So there will be some overlapping in the work that's being done. The professionals that were not included in this list, they're not precluded in phase 2 and phase 3, in addition to the ones that are in phase 1. So we've not eliminated any professional that just have not been chosen as of yet to perform the services for phase 1.
Thank you. That's
Any
very
questions?
helpful.
Anything more, Mr. McCracken, that you want to share in terms of the bond oversight committee that was held?
Thank you. The Bond Oversight Committee was held on January the 22nd, I believe. Very good meeting, a lot of questions, and we hope that we answered all the questions to meet their satisfaction. And we're excited about the next Bond Oversight Committee meeting, which is scheduled for the 26th, I believe, of this month.
At 4.
At 4 o'clock, at 4 p.m. in this room here. But we had a very good meeting.
Yeah.
And everyone was quite involved and, again, had a series of questions that we hope that we were able to answer.
As I recall, there was a bit of conversation about the projects that were included in this first phase. Would you like to say, or could you speak to how we got to these projects and how others might be placed on the timeline going forward?
Absolutely. Again, there was a question about how some of the projects were determined, or what type of projects were determined. And that was primarily based upon our observation, staff observation, as well as our investigations at various schools in terms of the needs. Entering on some properties, the parking lots are in poor condition. That was a part of the selection process. Electrical issues, HVAC issues that we're constantly having to repair on a daily basis, especially during this type of weather. Roofing issues, fortunately we've managed to resolve a lot of roofing issues through the hailstorm funding. Lighting, exterior lighting, there was several questions in reference to exterior lighting, and restrooms. Restroom facilities are in most cases in poor condition, primarily because of your private laterals or your sewer lines that have collapsed or in poor condition or have some deflection that's creating problems on a daily basis. So that's how that list became forward, and we presented it in each school, especially the need. And we will prioritize those needs at each school. We will certainly inform each principal, the area superintendents. They will be a part of the meetings with the architects so that they will be fully aware of each project and each activity that's going on at each school. Okay.
Great. And this is an ongoing process as we select contractors.
This is correct.
I appreciate your making clear that we're looking for best fit at all times for the
Absolutely.
needs of this.
Absolutely.
Thank
Mr.
you.
McCracken, I noticed that these are information-only items. Is there action that's required of the board at some point soon?
We will bring that to you next month.
And board members, just to note here, we're endeavoring as a team to bring before you information first, to give you an opportunity to delve into the information that we're bringing, the contracts or the scope of the work, whatever it might be, so that you can ask us the questions that you'd like to ask, and we can make sure that we're getting that information back to you, so that as you come to decision points, you're best armed to make those decisions. So that's a commitment that we're making as a team. Except in those times when we have emergencies or oftentimes with financial reports that need to be approved.
Thank you. This is very exciting. Thank you for your work. Thank you.
you.
Dr.
Can I ask
Oh,
your
wait.
questions?
Dr.
Mr. McCracken.
Yes, sir.
First of all, thank you for the spreadsheet. It's very well done. And one of the things I was excited to see is that of this first phase, which is about $43 million, the firms that were selected are all within the city limits.
That's
is that
correct.
correct?
Yes.
So again, this is a project that's bringing economic benefit back to the city, and it looks like about 25% of the funds are to minority business enterprises. Is that correct?
That
as
is
well?
correct, and probably will increase as well.
That's great. My screen just closed. I had one more question I was going to ask you.
At least you didn't lose your paper.
No, that's okay. In the projects in phase one, actually, I have two questions. These are all anticipated to be completed by the end of this year, this calendar year?
That is the plan. There will be some projects that will be a little more challenging than others in terms of cost, and the sooner the better in terms of us moving forward with the selection process and getting contractors on board. We will hope to be able to complete those by the end of the year, the end of the calendar year.
Calendar year, yes.
December.
Yes.
And then the last question, which Dr. Green, this may be a question for you, is just the communications plan for. I think it's great that we talk about it here, but down to the project level, I think we really want to be forward-thinking, proactive is the word I'm looking for. Proactive with how we share with the community. The projects that have been selected, when construction starts, when we actually are making progress towards all the things that we talked about during the campaign, and we'll move forward with from here.
Absolutely. So we already have plans to, one, obviously utilize the board meeting to provide general updates across the bond projects, to utilize our website. We have a web page that's dedicated to the bond projects, so folks can go there and get updates. As well, we want to use our social media platforms to provide some up-to-date pictures of some of the work that's being done and kind of where we are with that, as well as specific information that a particular school community might need in terms of any interruption to access roads or any of that sort of thing, as that might be the case, and that sort of thing. In addition to that, we're absolutely wanting to and have asked and solicited the support from bond oversight committee members to and that's actually part of the reason why we have the Bond Oversight Committee, that those folks will help us to spread the word about the projects themselves, about any deviations that we might need to make in the projects as they were originally conceived, because there might be things that we find as we get behind walls and under
Latent
floors and that
conditions.
sort of thing. Right, those conditions that create for us a need to make some shifts. But we do have asked that the Bond Oversight Committee members that they intentionally look for opportunities to share in their wards updates about the projects themselves as we continue.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCracken.
Thank you.
Item 8, information action, Ms. Lyons, approval of the Mississippi Employer Assisted Housing Teacher Program Loan Agreement. Oh, excuse me, Ms. Miller.
Ms. Lyons is
How are
out this
you?
evening, so I'll be standing in for her. Thank you, Dr. Harrison, Dr. Green. I'm presenting to you on behalf of Ms. Lyons the approval of the Mississippi Employer Assisted Housing Teacher Program Loan Agreement. We brought several of these to you. This is an opportunity for our teachers to participate in a loan program through the Mississippi Department of Education and also Fannie Mae to get some assistance with their first-time home buyers. This is a teacher who has applied for this loan through, she's a teacher at Murrah High School, and there is a 3-year obligation to the district, or there will be some repayment. This is actually an agreement between the teacher and the Mississippi Department of Education, but it does have to go through this board for your approval.
Thank you. Board members, you have questions or comments for Ms. Miller? Do I hear a motion? Do we need to approve? Yes. Do I hear a motion to approve item A?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Moved and properly seconded. Item 8A, approval of Mississippi Employer Assisted Housing Teacher Program Loan Agreement. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Hearing none, that is approved. Ms. Miller, could you move to item C first? Approval of monthly financial report.
Sure. Board members, I'm presenting to you for your approval the financial report for the month ended December 31st, 2018. Just a couple of notes. We are actually, I'm very pleased with where we are in December as well as January. I've been looking forward. Just for comparison's sake, we are a little bit higher than we are, about $450,000 more on general fund balance at the end of December than we were December of 17. Our cash flow is actually about $600,000 higher in 2018 than it was in 2017. So we are trending in the right direction. I'm very pleased with where we're headed. We had our final review with our auditor today on the 18 audit. We'll be updating with Dr. Green and also with the Financial Committee and the board on where we are in the audit and also some projections for the future. But this report is being presented to you for your approval tonight. It also includes the fund balance report, the budget status report, the statement of bank reconciliations, and also the district maintenance cash flow reports.
Just so that you're not waiting with bated breath, we do believe that we'll have a really strong and positive audit
Yes.
report.
Yes.
Just in case you were wondering.
Yes. I was trying to keep y'all in anticipation for another one. Yes.
Questions or comments, board members, for item C? Excuse me. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the monthly financial report presented by Ms. Miller. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none. In opposition, the item has been approved. Ms. Miller, thank you for your patience. Will you share item B?
Yes, item B is the approval of the teachers, counselors, librarians, and psychometrist staff contracts for the 2019-2020 school year. This is about 1,286 of our professionals that are currently certified, have met all the requirements, and we are requesting that the board allow us to move forward with issuing contracts for the 1920 school year.
2019-2020.
Yes, it all runs together. 2019-2020 school year. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Board members, do you have questions or comments?
I had a couple questions. One is, looks like we're ahead of the game this year.
We are so ahead of the game, and we are excited about it.
Congratulations.
We are actually, I think, ahead of everybody. So tomorrow is going to be a very exciting day for us as a district.
Can I
Sure,
please?
please.
So I'm over here trying to jump out of my seat. Mrs. Miller is, I think, downplaying a little bit the work that went into making this happen today, getting this before you. One, there's a commitment on this team's part, and I know the board, to ensure that we set ourselves up for great success in having a certified teacher in every seat, in every classroom in our schools. And in order to do that, we're wanting to get out there more quickly to our current staff, offer contracts to them, let them know kind of where they stand with us. And, oh, by the way, we're outpacing all but maybe one of the metro districts in terms of our scale for teachers. And so as we position ourselves to be that level of competition that we know we can be and need to be for educators who have choices, we want to make sure that we get out there with our contracts, and that allows us to better understand where we have needs and to double down and target our recruitment efforts, and to understand where we will have challenges going forward. So we're very excited about this, and thank you, Dr. Sivak, for asking that question. We acknowledge that this is a decidedly different and much better way to engage with our teachers, our educators.
And just to get a sense of how far ahead we are, what is typically the deadline for contracts for this group of team members?
We have been, as late as April. Traditionally, you have some school districts that, and then we have in the past waited until the legislature has actually approved the funding bill and the governor signs. What we found, of course, over the past couple of years is several school districts, we all have the same idea. We're all competing over the same group of people. And so we start backing that up even further. We pretty much are starting with our projections of where our budget is going to be. But at the bottom line, we know we're going to need teachers. So we want to engage our teachers early on. I think last year we probably came to you right after spring break. I think it was late March. Before we brought the contracts forward. So this is about 6 weeks ahead of time.
Okay. And also this will come up later, but just to be clear with anyone who's watching the meeting, there's an amendment that will come before us later on in the occurrence of a teacher pay raise at the state level. So everyone will get that.
Yes. But on this one now, everyone gets a step increase anyway. This is the regular step increase that's already guaranteed. So these contracts that will go out will have a step increase for everyone anyway, because that's already mandated.
Okay.
And we'll continue to issue contracts.
Yes, ma'am. We are working diligently with our staff and our remaining staff to make sure that they are getting all their CEUs, professional development, getting licensed. The State Department is actually initiating an online process so that we won't have to make so many paper copies and deliver paper to the State Department. We'll be able to upload those applications, get those approved quite quickly, then get the license and immediately turn around and hand out the contract. So yes, ma'am, we'll be bringing contracts. I would imagine for the next several months you will be seeing a number of contracts come forward.
Great. Okay. Excellent. Thank you so much for your work. Other questions or comments, board members? Do you hear a motion to approve item 8B, the approval of the staff members and the salary scale for school year 2019-2020?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the item has been approved. Ms. Miller. Continuing with Ms. Miller, consent agenda items under finance. Item A.
This is consent.
Can we put them together?
Unless anyone wants to pull. We can ask the board if there's any that want to pull.
Yeah, board members, do you have anything you want to pull to discuss? Because I did have I might want to pull item D. Just a minute. Anybody have a question about item D other than me?
D is in dog.
D is in, no, G, I'm sorry, G.
G, okay,
With the
yes, ma'am.
exceptional education.
Oh,
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like that one
Yeah,
pulled
okay,
too.
great. Anybody, okay. Well, Dr. Sivak wants to pull item G.
Okay.
Okay, I co-sign. But board members, do I hear a motion to approve items A through F?
So moved.
Do I hear a second? Thank you, board members. We have a motion to approve, which has been seconded, consent agenda items A through F. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, these items A through F have been approved. Thank you. Item G, Ms. Milburn, approval of
I'm sorry.
exceptional education budget.
Item G is the approval of the amended exceptional education budget, which is Fund 1130 for fiscal year 2018-2019, which is the current school year for the district. As you're aware, there are two funds for exceptional education. There's the 1130 fund, which is the district maintenance side, and there's also 2610 and then 2620, which is the federal side. We were recently made aware of, we've always been aware of what we call MOE, maintenance of effort, which means that school districts must expend the same amount of dollars on those exceptional ed students on the district side that you did in previous years. We have always been aware of that, and we've maintained that and worked toward that. I think from my conversation with MDE staff last week, late in the year, in the late spring, the State Department became aware of this new criteria to not only qualify for MOE compliance, but MOE eligibility. And so because of that, I think because it was so late in the year, they knew that school districts had already adopted their budgets. They decided to move us forward and then let us come back and adjust our budgets. So MOE compliance is what we're traditionally used to, which is expending the amount of money, the same amount of money in 1 year that we did the previous two. MOE eligibility, however, is different for us. That's new. What this does, it actually requires us to budget the same amount that we budgeted 2 years prior, or the year that we previously met MOE. So for us, it was 2014, 2015. Yes, that's how I looked too.
That was my question.
That's how I looked as well. And I can assure you, Ms. Bingham, Dr. Murray, and I went several rounds with MDE to get some clearer understanding of this process. From all that we have been told, all we have been instructed is the districts have to budget the same amount. Now, we will meet eligibility by budgeting the same amount. We will meet MOE compliance by expending the same amount that we did in the previous year. So when we prepare the 2019-2020 budget for 1130, that budget will mirror what we budgeted in 15-16. It has no regard for the number of students that you had. We have, as you are aware, turnover with teachers, so we'll have senior teachers who are maybe a 3A level 25 who will retire, and we will replace that person with a 1A level 6. So there's some difference there. We will meet compliance, but we won't necessarily meet eligibility until we actually budget the same amount. So the Finance Committee will see us recommend an 1130 budget to make sure that we meet eligibility. But again, we know what we need to spend. We have a much greater sense of what we know we need to spend, what our needs are for our students to make sure that we meet compliance. So this is being presented to you tonight so that we can meet MOE eligibility. And I think what I mentioned in my response to a board question was, you will soon then receive another amended budget that will reflect more accurately what we know that budget to be for the current year. So yes, it's I think it's a formality.
Mm-hmm. Did you get your question answered?
So in line with that formality, one of the questions that I asked was really around expenditures.
Correct.
And for all practical purposes, we don't anticipate additional funds being spent to meet this compliance requirement.
No, so we will have met compliance because we will have spent at the end of 18-19 what we spent in 16-17. Mm-hmm. It's just the budget, it has to be the same.
Okay,
so we don't anticipate the expenditures being nearly what this is.
That's helpful. And then the other thing that I think just is important for the record, this is a requirement that affects all school districts, I guess nationally.
This is correct.
It's a federal
That's our
requirement.
understanding. It's a federal requirement.
And we just became aware of this.
About 3 or 4 weeks
3 or
ago,
4 weeks,
December maybe. And it's one of the processes that we have to comply with in order to get our funding approved for the federal side, from the state side.
Federal
So we
programs.
have to do this so we can move forward with our other funding.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, that's very helpful, Ms. Miller. Do I hear a motion to approve item 9G?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, item 9G has been approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Consent agenda items 10. Dr. Green, we have 2 items that you will bring before the board. Thank you.
So in our efforts to better understand the educational services that we provide, the value of, the effectiveness of the educational services that we provide to students and families, it is not only important that we track students' performance here with us, grades, attendance, behavior, and of course the standardized state tests and that sort of thing, but as well their college admissions testing scores and their entrance into college and persistence through college. And while few educators would argue against the importance of knowing the data of our students as they take those college acceptance tests, as they enter, or get admitted into and actually enroll and persist through college, the work of tracking those students into and through college is pretty tough. In my understanding and guess is that with many districts, they don't have the structures in place to track those students. And so the whole point here is to begin a partnership with the Woodville Hines Foundation and kind of as well as a partnership with the National Clearinghouse, Data Clearinghouse, to gather our own data and to receive some analysis of our students, again, as they enter and persist through and complete college. That's the intent of this negotiation, of this contract. We initially were approached by the Woodville Hines Foundation, and they offered to cover the costs of our participation with the National Clearinghouse. And so obviously we're excited about that and appreciate that. But as we got into the negotiations in terms of the agreement with them, we realized that we also needed an agreement with the National Clearinghouse. And so what you have before you is an effort to do both of those, to get both of those in place, as well as to address concerns and protect ourselves around the management of student data and that sort of thing.
Thank you. That seems like a very helpful thing, that information we need to know to be able to keep up with our students in an organized fashion.
And I should also say, we definitely recognize the need to gather and maintain as much of that data as we can in-house, but because students are able to go all across, can go anywhere in the world to college, we know that it's difficult, again, for the local district to track them and have a line of sight to where those students are and when they complete college. So that's why it's necessary to get some assistance with this.
Board members, you have questions or comments for Dr. Green? Hearing that.
I had a conversation with Attorney Turner earlier in the day regarding protection of the district in the event of a data breach, and want to just make sure those protections are in this contract. And Also, are the provisions in place for the information to be shared with Woodville Hines as well in the contract? Because I believe, given the regulations associated with student data, there's got to be written into the contract.
So I'll just share that our agreement will be to share from our district to only share de-identified students, using the student ID numbers, but not any of their personal identifiers, names and that sort of thing. I think the other piece you wanted to.
Well, we've reached out to the National Clearinghouse to suggest some language to the contract that would deal with an indemnification. What we would essentially be looking for is an indemnification from them in the event of a data breach or hack-in that led to an improper disclosure of the district's information. And I think the response is they have to run it through their attorneys, and we've not heard back from them yet as to whether or not they're agreeable to it. So I guess I would suggest to Dr. Green and to the board, the decision needs to be centered around, if they agree to it, fine. If they don't agree to it, is it that the board is willing to move forward without that, or is it that the board does not want to move forward? I was having kind of an informal conversation with Dr. Green that I think more or all school districts now are going to want to start looking for that type of protection in contracts that they do, where there's going to be this sharing of information on a digital basis. Kind of the logistics and the reality of that, though, is going to be, it will really come down to a bargaining with the company. It will be, those are issues, or those are incidences that, just about any company, tech company, will tell you there's probably no 100% foolproof protection that they can do, so it's really just a matter of an allocation of the risk. Mm-hmm. Some companies will be willing to take that risk on and provide that indemnification. I think particularly in an instance where you're looking at a contract that has significant dollars, some companies won't, because it is a significant risk. And so the question is going to be to make a decision. If you're going to take a position that we're going to make it a blanket requirement, then I think you can expect that there will be some companies that won't want to do that. And so you'll have to decide on a case-by-case basis, when is it okay to insist on it, or when will you insist on it, and when you won't. We've just not heard back from this company yet, so I have no idea what their response is going to be. So that's kind of where we are with the National Clearinghouse. We were able to clear it up today, as Dr. Green reported, after some further conversation with the representatives of the foundation today. And just it's Woodward Hines, since they may be giving us money. Yes, we should identify them correctly. But I had conversation with the representatives of Woodward Hines, and because it'll be de-identified data that'll go to them, it's not as much of a concern. That doesn't mean that there couldn't be a hack of the information, but hopefully, since the information itself won't be tied to students' names, it would just be the aggregate de-identified data, so presumably even if they hacked it, they wouldn't know the individual student or person that data was hacked to. But that sort of data recovery indemnification is not in the Woodward Hines contract, and it's not in the NSC. I think you had asked about it, particularly in the context of the NSC. So, they do, from what I understand, these types of agreements with school districts and schools all across the country. And so it may be that we make the request and they're like, okay, this is something that we do because we're used to this, or it could be, that, they're like, no way, because if we do it for y'all, we'll have to do it for everybody else, and that's just not a liability we're willing to take on.
Did they give any indication when you reached out to NCS that this was something unusual, or this was...
I didn't personally reach out to him. I think it was Dr. Sargent, Jason Sargent, who reached out to him, and I think the response that was reported to me was that they said they had to consult with their attorneys, and it was about a 7 to 10 day process before we'd hear back from them one way or the other. But I have no idea. which, if either of those
This
might
was
be
an
the case.
oral conversation so far with Dr. Sargent
I
and
think so. I just know
NCS.
Dr. Sargent has been the point of contact with the representatives of NSC. I've just been kind of drafting contract language.
I have a question. Does the sharing of this data require parental or student consent?
No, the contracts are written to comply with the FERPA exception that says if you're sharing information for purposes of a study, if there's certain requirements that you include in well, first of all, you have to have a written agreement, but there would be requirements, and you'll see some language in it that number one says the sharing of the data can only be used for the purposes of the study. You have to have requirements with regard to the data being destroyed once it's no longer being used, and you have to specify when the data is going to be used. And I think the third requirement is that the study has to be conducted in a manner that requires that the only people who have access to the data would be people with a legitimate interest in accessing that data to use it for the purposes for which you're disclosing it. So both of these agreements contain language that would make it, assuming we follow it, that would make it compliant with the exception that you don't have to get parental permission or student permission to share it.
Thank you.
Am I understanding the contract right as well, that it's actually not current students, it's students who've already graduated? Is that correct?
It's 7 years of prior graduate data information, and then once it's available, this current year
Going forward.
information.
Okay, that's helpful. And it looks like these agreements are already in place for DeSoto County schools, Jackson County schools, Rankin County schools, and Washington County schools within the state of Mississippi? Okay.
So the question before us then, particularly of NCS, is to approve this even though we don't have a response yet. It will take 7 to 10 days to.
Well, what you could do is if the board makes, I guess, as I say, the board could make a decision that we will approve it contingent upon them agreeing to it. And then, obviously, if they're agreeable to it, then we can move forward with executing the contract. I guess the primary issue would be if they say, no, we aren't willing to include the data breach indemnification, is the board still willing to agree to it either on a contingent basis, or you could just table it, just depending on, and that would be Dr. Green to talk about the time sensitivity of it. If you don't want to have to wait until the next board meeting, then would you be willing to approve it on a contingent basis? How you decide it works out with the data breach indemnification, or having a special meeting for it, or just tabling it. One thing I will say is that you could move forward with one or not the other. I have added some language to the Woodward-Hines to say that it's essentially contingent upon the agreement with the clearinghouse, because the information that we provide to Woodward-Hines is information that we get from NSC. So if we don't move forward with the agreement with NSC, there's no data and information to provide to Woodward-Hines for them to do the project that they're contemplating. The other thing that I can tell you we established this afternoon is that it is a $425 fee for each of the 7 schools. So there's a blank for the amount that they would be providing us, and that's $2,975, the subscription fee for the information for each of the high schools that would be enrolled. So we have a version of the agreement which the Woodward-Hines people have signed off on. But like I say, moving forward with that one would be contingent upon us working out an arrangement with NSC.
Well, 10 days will be our next board meeting if we have to wait 7 to 10 days. I don't know.
I'm comfortable with the contingency, and then it's really it's a question. It's a risk.
It's a risk question. And I just like to know all the
and so I think as far from why I might advocate for doing it contingent is it moves this forward. It sends the signal that from a programmatic perspective, I actually think we'll derive a lot of benefit from it. I think as a board, we do need to have conversations about where we expose the district to financial risk. Sure. And I think knowing that it's in those other school districts gives me also some comfort with moving forward on a contingent basis. But
Would
I'd be open to discussion.
Or would you want to add that to the motion? That we contingent upon a favorable response from NCS in 7 to 10 days?
Or I just say contingent on a favorable response.
Period,
Yeah.
whenever it comes.
And then I think we should be open to having this, to voting on it again if after meeting with your team, you decide it's a risk we're willing to bear and you bring it back before us and we review it again.
That makes sense to me. What's your pleasure, board? Can somebody succinctly put that in an amendment to the motion?
I mean, I'll make the motion that we approve the language that Attorney Turner has described and is before us, contingent on provision added to the contracts to indemnify the district in the event of a data breach. Is that?
Do I hear a second? It's been moved and seconded that we approve the 2 items with the caveat note to the record of a favorable response from NCS. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion is passed. Motions have passed. The items have passed. Thank you, Dr. Green. Ms. Miller, item 11, approval of personnel matters.
Yes, thank you again, Dr. Harrison, Dr. Green, members of the board. I present to you 4 items under consent agenda items personnel. Item A is approval of staff personnel matters. Item B is approval of the salary schedule for the executive cabinet effective March 1, 2019. Item C, approval of the addendum to the teacher contracts for the 2019-2020 school year. And item D, the approval of the 2019-2020 academic calendar.
Now, some of that information we're supposed to receive at this meeting.
We have it.
Do we have received it? Well, when I clicked on my button, it said they give it out at the meeting. Have I missed something?
I think that may have been E-rate.
Yeah, but when I clicked on my agenda for the attachments, it said will be handed out at the board meeting. Were we supposed to have something with it?
Yes, you were supposed to get it otherwise.
It is.
You all, no one else got it?
It's on here. Well, I've got staff personnel, but I don't have B and C. We're just on A now. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm jumping the. There's no B or C?
Okay, so
No, it's there.
B, yes, it should be in there.
It wasn't in mine either.
There's B.
Okay, well, my bad. Joni, let me look on your button. Patience, please. Go back to the agenda. That we got when it says click on there.
Staff personnel matter.
But if we're just A, we're good. If we're just considering A.
Yeah, I sure did. I'm just,
It's all of them.
I was showing all of this B.
Oh, okay. Well, let me find these notes then. I just thought there would be something else coming.
Oh, and it's just
Yeah,
says
okay, I
executive
got you.
summaries.
I
Yes,
got
ma'am.
you. I got you. Thank you. And let me look at my second one. It was in your cover statement, Ms.
Yes,
Miller.
ma'am.
I assumed that it would be something
Oh,
else.
no, it's just executive summaries. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good deal. I'm sorry. Thank you for your patience, board. Thank you. So, we're not approving these together, are we?
It's a consent agenda unless there are items you want to pull.
No. I don't want to pull D. I want to approve it, but I would like to learn more about it.
Okay.
The academic calendar?
Yeah.
Okay.
Could you just share a little bit?
Sure.
Item D, Ms. Miller.
Yes, ma'am. Item
I'm
D.
very excited about the professional development days, and
Yes,
I just
ma'am.
want to learn more about that because I think it's an excellent idea.
If you don't mind, and Dr. Sivak mentioned it, but I do think it's incumbent of us to mention the addendum to the teacher contract, because I think that would be of interest to our teachers because the contracts are coming out tomorrow. This addendum is being provided, and I think that's item B, maybe? C, sorry. The addendum is being provided to every teacher that receives a contract so that in the event there is a salary change as approved by the legislature and the governor, that we will make those adjustments for every teacher in accordance to the salary scale, and so there will be no need to reissue another contract. And so we wanted to make sure that our teachers were comfortable in knowing that when they get their contracts tomorrow, when they sign them immediately and turn them back in, as opposed to waiting 10 days, that there will be an adjustment in the event that the teacher pay raise is coming to fruition. One thing I will say is some information that I received last night is that it looks like it may not necessarily be a change to the pay scale. It may be a lump sum payment at one time, once this year, once next year. So there are several variations that are coming out about the teacher pay raise. So it may be some time before maybe April, before we really know. But again, as Dr. Green indicated, we wanted to make sure our teachers were comfortable to know that we are dedicated and we are committed to making sure that their salaries will be adjusted. So that's the purpose of the addendum.
Great. Okay. That was clear. Thank you so much for that.
And also the 2019-2020 academic calendar, we are providing you this calendar. It's primarily the same as we were on this year. It does provide for 180 student days and 187 teacher days, but it does also provide for early release days for professional development. That you will see that it's the fourth Tuesday of each month for the months of August through March, except for the month of November, because that would be the third weekend, because the fourth is Thanksgiving. But this will give our teachers hands-on, directed PD in their buildings or wherever that will be targeted for them. We have a number of teachers that need to receive their CEUs. We're going to work with our professional development department so that they get their CEUs right here. But this is a challenge. Dr. Green came in when he came in and said, I need more days on the calendar. And so the first thing I said was, you know, that costs a lot of money. So he challenged us as a team to kind of figure out how to do this. And we're really excited about the need to do this. I think that there will be some instructional shifts that I think parents and instructors will be happy about next year. But this will give us some time that we will actually be able to spend. The teachers will be already at school. They won't have to worry about giving up their nights, their weekends, to get some professional development that is much needed. So we are very excited to present to you this academic calendar for the 2019-2020 school year.
And just another note on that, board members. When you look at higher performing districts, and I would say high performing districts, not just higher, high performing districts, you'll typically see plenty evidence of their investment in capacity and capacity building and effectiveness. And so as we think about shifts that we anticipate in terms of our curriculum, realigning and raising expectations for both teacher instruction and the instructional delivery as well as student outcomes. We know that we've got to invest in our teachers and our school leaders and all of us around what kids are experiencing in their classrooms, and one way to do that is to create the time and space for professionals to be professionals and not expect that they'll do better without the time to prepare to do better. And so that's what this is starting to get at. I think as we continue to spend time together, we'll have additional conversations around the amount of time that teachers need in order to do make the kinds of shifts that we expect them to make in their classrooms. But this is a great start, and I'm very excited about this and what this can mean for our district and for teaching and learning in our schools.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dr. Green. When I saw it, I thought it was a very good idea.
And did we say, for the record, what did I miss? That we're essentially building in just about every month.
Yes.
release day, and we've identified a consistent day so that parents and families can plan around that. So it's really trying to be as thoughtful as possible, both on the needs of our educators as well as our students and families to lift this.
And the professional development will be led by in-house strengths?
It'll likely be a mix.
Internal and external.
It'll likely be a mix. Yes, we absolutely want to make sure that our folks who are doing amazing work, that they have opportunities to share that as peers, as colleagues, as district leaders. But as well, we know that we've got, especially if we, as we move towards curriculum adoption, we know that there will be some needs around that as well, and we'll likely bring in some folks, some external folks. But this is an opportunity for us to be a bit more flexible with that delivery.
And this will be school-based as well as district-focused, district-aligned, so to speak.
So one, yes, definitely district aligned. Definitely district aligned, but there will be opportunities for schools to peel off because of the particular program that they run, or the characteristics of the school that allow for them to lift some professional development needs as well. So what we will do, and you'll start to see this as we build out our plan over the next 3 to 5 years, but and I should stop saying that, over the next 5 years. As we build that plan out, you'll see specific instructional and professional development focus areas. And so as we develop that for the district, then we can start to see how pieces of that can be lifted during these professional development days. And so, for example, a focus on culture, PBIS, or building relationships with young people or amongst adults, or whatever it might be. Perhaps that's something that we have we carve out some time from those professional development days to ensure that district-wide there's a focus, and that there's an opportunity for the school leaders and the teacher leaders within the school, and perhaps even community members to join in those conversations and identifying and developing practices that work, that help to develop relationships, sustain relationships over time, overcome conflict within classrooms, whatever it might be.
And because it's already a part of the school day, there won't be a lot of extra costs, but we've got professional development funds that will be set aside to make sure this happens.
Correct, and that's how we support professional development. So the objective here was that it was not going to cost us any additional dollars. We've directed and allocated professional development to support this, and so this is something the teachers will be able to do during the day, and it won't cause an issue for them extended hours or things like that.
Right. And pre and post assessments in there somewhere to give us a sense of how we're doing.
Well, to be clear, that the pre and post assessments will be the assessments that we currently take.
Right.
Because there's no way to, I mean, other than observations of, I guess we could give teachers an assessment of what you learned, as a result of that session, but for we're looking at this as a part of the larger work around coaching, the larger work around the new materials that we adopt, other supports, and so it'll be difficult to peel out what is it about this.
No, I appreciate that. So the board will learn more about our district-wide pre and post assessment efforts around our work.
Right.
So
Indeed.
that we won't have to keep asking what's it going to be for this particular. We'll know that
Correct.
it's part of our ongoing
Indeed.
work.
Indeed.
Thank you for that. Great. Thank you, Ms.
Kudos again to the team, to Ms. Miller, to Dr. Murray, Dr. Sargent, and to others who were involved in really crunching numbers and finding this third way.
And here again, teamwork, we've got to communicate to our parents what's happening and why, because being out of school, it's 80% days. It's, on the one hand, we would love more time, but on the other hand, parents have to plan for those 80% days.
And that's one of the reasons that we wanted to target those today, now, fourth Tuesday of every month, except for November, which is the third Tuesday. So actually when to plan for that now, 6-7 months out. So that's one of the reasons we were very thoughtful in putting this information out at this point in the year.
Great. I'm very excited about this.
We should also note that we spoke with parent representatives, P16 Council, PTA, as well as some teacher representatives, school leader representatives, and others to give us some AFT, MEA, and others to give to get some feedback from them on this sort of thing, because we know that it is a lift. We know that it will be a departure for folks, and will require some shifting of kind of how folks live their lives.
Great. This is excellent. So where are we on the approval? We only have D left. We've already done A, B, and C. Thank you. Do I hear a motion from a board member to approve item 11D, the academic calendar?
Or it's all of them?
All of them,
agenda.
okay. All of them, A through D.
A through D.
A through D. Hear a motion.
So moved.
Do I hear a second? It's been moved and seconded that we approve consent agenda items, personnel on number 11, A through D. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the items have been approved. Thank you, team, Ms. Miller, for your work.
Thank you.
Board members, do we have other business? Hearing none, moving to item 13. Do I hear a motion to consider holding an executive session?
No.
Hearing none, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Hearing one, all in second, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you for joining us tonight, Jackson.
Hour and a half. That was quick work.